we're a special meeting, right?
Yes,
Special meeting of the Board of Finance. To order, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 on the agenda is to waive Section 2G2 of the purchasing policies regarding the disposition of real estate relative to the sale of property at Depot Square to Bristol Hospital and take any action as necessary.
Does someone have a motion?
Yes, I do. Chair, I'd like to waive Section 2G2 of the purchasing policies regarding disposition of the real estate relative to the sale of property at Depot Square to Bristol Hospital. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. And Roger, you're here. I understand you're prepared with a couple statements, or do you want to see if there's any questions? Okay.
I'll let Richard read in and then I'll follow.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just had a couple of things to mention to the board. First of all, we all know from reading in the paper that Bristol Hospital is seeking a waiver of this Board of Finance requirement. I'm sorry. Their proposal is for a 120,000 square foot building, which would be a huge addition to our downtown. As we're just in a discussion phase, and there's no public money required in this proposal. It would be taxable property. Of course, it is property within the enterprise zone. So any property in the enterprise zone, there's been several examples, can take advantage of the 7-year phase-in on taxes. The hospital is going to be making a significant investment in plans, professional fees, site planning, that sort of thing during this due diligence phase. We're not in a contract mode. This is just a letter of intent that's anticipated. And it's hoped by the hospital and by the staff that the Board of Finance would favorably consider a waiver because of this investment and because of the unique opportunity that it presents for downtown development. And I'll let Roger talk a little bit about the policy implications.
Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Ultimately, it was approximately a year ago that my office had worked with the Real Estate Committee for the City Council to try and establish a policy to govern the disposition of property, because there were a number of issues in terms of trying to make sure that we were doing things efficiently in terms of disposing of properties. So we've established a policy, and that policy is now within our purchasing guidelines. It's actually part of the Code of Ordinances now as well, so it loops back into you. Ultimately, that policy calls for 2 different types of methodologies for disposition of real estate. One would be via the engaging of a realtor, and we have done that on certain occasions. In this particular case, I think primarily you'd be engaging a commission unnecessarily. We also have the tried and true method of soliciting activity with the land parcels via request for proposals. So those are the 2 options that are listed within your guidelines. To actually pursue a request for proposals, I don't think would be prudent in this particular case, given the fact that there are a number of items that are still subject to negotiation in terms of trying to finalize what actually is the intent for the party involved, as well as what our needs are as well to express that. So I don't think this policy is necessarily applicable to this specific instance. I think you're probably better suited to allow this policy to exempt from this policy for this individual transaction.
Do you want to make a comment before I open for questions?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
I don't actually have a question, but I was a little skeptical at first, but the more I thought about this, I have to tell you, I think it's a terrific idea. They're vested in this city, and it certainly is. I think I agree. It'd be a good jumpstart for the city. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
This is a second largest employer in Bristol, and We really feel that, talking with the city planner, this is going to be the catalyst to jumpstart downtown. The huge thing is they're not asking for any city money. They're not asking for $1 million, $2 million, nothing, which is huge. This is private money, bringing approximately 250 to 300 jobs downtown. These are high-paying jobs, doctors and nurses. And that doesn't include the patients. These are people that are going to go to lunch, that are going to go to dinner, that are going to shop on downtown. So I think this is a huge jumpstart for downtown, and they are ready to go as soon as we give them the go.
Other questions? Mike?
So this building, they're going to be relocating a lot of offices, right? So there's going to be vacancies outside of this one building around Bristol, correct?
Well, yes, I mean, that's outside purview of what we're asking the Board of Finance to do, but yes, they're looking to combine approximately 80 leases that are throughout not only Bristol, Plainville, and bring them under one building. Keep in mind, this is happening, whether it's in Bristol or they build somewhere else, they're building this building. So we need to take care of our downtown, we need to take care of our taxes, because these aren't going to consolidate. It's just a matter of where they do it. They are talking to other spots, parcels. They're looking at other parcels, and there's at least 3 of them that I know of that they're looking at, besides downtown. So this is happening. It's just a matter of where it's going to happen.
I think I'd add that some of the spots that they currently use is very desirable locations that would probably be quickly taken up by another entity, given where they are in their locale and the availability of parking as well. John?
They're existing, they don't have enough existing leases now to accommodate the kind of space they're asking. They're going to be bringing in more people. Most of the leases they have now, I negotiated when I was still at the hospital, so they're spread out. They're in small spaces all over town, so it's, and in Terryville and other places. So they bring them all down here. That's a home run. I just hope it doesn't take as long to get this off the ground as our history has been in the past, for the past 4 or 5 years. So sooner we can get this thing going, as the mayor said, this can jumpstart what we want to happen down here.
So this opens a door for our council to negotiate the best possible deal for the real estate and give them that mechanism to say, yes, they don't have to go through the RFP process. We have somebody willing to invest currently in downtown, and I concur with the statements that were brought forward. This is going to drive economic activity downtown and will jumpstart the rest of the property. And it's an entity that's not asking for city dollars as an investment. And once the enterprise zone covenants work their way through, it will be fully on the tax rolls. So I think this is a win. Nicely done.
Chair.
Any other questions?
If somebody can answer this. The existing property that is leased by Bristol Hospital, that currently is non-taxable property?
No.
Or it's taxable property?
All of the property that the hospital presently leases, including Little Road, which is a condominium,
Right.
is taxable. Ingram Manor is taxable. Only parcel that's not taxable where they have positions is in the hospital proper.
Okay.
But for example, on Route 6, Dumont's offices is taxable, and the plaza where Medwards is taxable.
All right.
Because they're all presently owned by, they're not owned by.
So this would create an additional taxable entity?
Yeah, because the landowner ends up paying the taxes. I think the only thing that we'd risk is what the price per square foot on the rentals are in the area. But the fact is, I think that it's going to be offset by the positives, bringing that downtown and consolidating and all that dollars downtown to be spent.
I think, Mike, if it's the medical foundation making the leases, I believe under their bylaws, it has to be market rent. Otherwise, it can't be. It can't be part of the foundation.
Any other questions? Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is item number 3, to approve a bid waiver to Nobis Engineering, Inc. for the Phase 3 assessment of 894 Middle Street. Take any action.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve a bid waiver for Nobis Engineering, Inc. for the Phase 3 assessment of 894 Middle Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Questions? Roger?
Yes, maybe I can give you a brief explanation on what this transaction actually is. The state of Connecticut had worked with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments to coordinate a grant to continue environmental analysis of the parcel on 894 Middle Street. So it was a contract that was negotiated jointly between the state of Connecticut and the NVCOG. Ultimately, it became a contract that while they negotiated the contract and competitively bid it, the city executed the contract. Another amendment had come forward, and the city again executed the amendment to it. Ultimately, there was an amendment whereby the city had to put in its share, so we made our contribution for the contract. And we are just about finished with doing all of the environmental analysis at 894 Middle Street, except that the state of Connecticut came along and said that they're looking for an additional amount of sampling to the tune of roughly $30,000. And they're providing the funding, which you've already since approved. The dilemma is that halfway through the process, there is an engineer that works under the company Geodesign, who left Geodesign and started his own company. So for a good portion of this contract term, we've been working with Geodesign, and they've subcontracted to Tim Carr's business. Through the course of time, the relationship has devolved between Geodesign and Tim Carr's new firm, which happens to be called Nobis. And we're right at the finish line in terms of finishing the sampling. In order to finish the sampling, the state of Connecticut and the Naugatuck Valley COG are both supportive of the concept of having the remaining testing done with the LEP that's on staff right now. That staff is not with Geodesign, it's with Tim Carr's firm, which is Nobis. So,
Yeah.
This is the old Libero junkyard, I think, across from ESPN.
yes.
We own it.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
So this becomes a valuable piece of real estate once it's
Cleaned up, yes.
Which could bring another good-sized taxpayer into this city.
Yes. I believe I may be speaking out of turn, but I believe the grants administrator has been working with EPA in terms of pursuing dollars for cleanup of the site. Is that correct?
That is, we're hoping to fund this entire balance of the study through grant money.
Wonderful.
Super.
Any other questions?
Yeah, do we have any testing results back yet?
Yes,
Because
I'm not the expert on it. Certainly PCBs were the big concern.
Yeah.
Batteries.
And I guess batteries, light fixtures, all that kind of stuff. Ballasts for
Yeah.
fluorescent lights. And it wouldn't, the results have come back very positive. It's certainly a contaminated site, but all the test wells are showing it's not as deep and not as extensive as we thought. There are some hydrocarbons, but it seems to be quite manageable, and depending upon the end use, these sites can be reused quite successfully if you make that a parking lot, for example.
Have they determined yet what the cleanup is going to entail? Because the real dollar's going to come at the cleanup end.
Well, I think that's where the completion of the sampling will come into play. Right now, it's a bit premature to assign costs to that until all the sampling's completed.
Okay.
But-
It's going to be expensive.
Oh, of course, it's, we're either going to excavate or we're going to flush the property for the next 15 years. And either way, that's expensive.
I think as far as this waiver goes, it makes sense. The DEP and EPA like to see consistency, especially in an LEP that started environmental study, and they like to see that same professional carry it through to the end. It's very important. So I see this makes perfect sense,
I don't know if you get another LEP who would
except the
accept all
results of
the
the
data,
first
previous data, you may not find one.
Right.
And DEP has pre-approved Nobis, so if you approve it,
Right.
the state is already on board there, an approved contractor.
Okay. Any other questions on the bid waiver? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And Tom, thank you for staying, even though we didn't deflect any questions to you. And Mark and Teresa, well, thank you too, and of course, everybody in the audience, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Adjournment is in order.
Move it.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming out on this special night, and have a happy new year.